Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, we'll be looking at something a little different. This is the Kotobukiya Mega Man X Full Armor. As always, we'll be going over this kit in 4 categories. I've also included timestamps in the description, in case you want to jump to a specific section. Now let's jump right into it, by first going over this build. With this Mega Man X being a Kotobukiya kit, it can be a little strange coming from a Gunpla perspective, but I still found this initial snap build to be pretty straightforward. It's a really quick build, something a beginner could knock out no problem, but it does have some fairly interesting engineering scattered throughout. There's actually somewhat of an inner frame here. Nothing too in-depth, and it's not really worth showing off, but you will notice the lower legs and upper chest have some internal pieces. The frame in the chest specifically allows for some great articulation from the arms. However, this limited inner frame doesn't really do the best job for keeping seam lines in check. Maybe it's just how big some of these armor pieces are, but you'll notice quite a few seam lines running up this kit. The standout ones for me are these on the side of the leg, these on the thigh, and these at the bottom of the forearm. However, the worst seam lines are probably found on his X Buster. There are some rough ones on both sides, and this top section looks pretty bad. Despite these rough seam lines though, the part separation here was extremely well done. The armors found in Mega Man X games have so many colors, so not gonna lie, I did assume most of them would be stickers here. Kotobukiya went above and beyond though, with pretty much everything having a separate piece. This includes the yellow trim on the legs, all these colors on the chest and shoulders, and even these details on the head. Pretty much everything here is a separate piece, so painting shouldn't be a problem. I was also really impressed by the inclusion of a pre-painted buckle for the waist. While I don't think this would have been too difficult for us to paint up on our own, it's just one less thing to worry about, you know? His face plates are also pre-painted. You get 3 faces to choose from: a standard face, a kind of awkward looking smile, and a more dynamic action expression. All these faces are interchangeable with the other Kotobukiya Mega Man kits too, so it's pretty easy to get a wide selection of options. Personally though, I think including a face based off the manga would have been cool, but that's just me. Anyway, on to the additional painting and detailing. With this solid part separation, there really isn't a whole lot needed of you. There are some minor touch-ups though that you'll want to look into if you want this to be as accurate to the game as possible. First off, we have this gray inside the circles on the side of the head. They come in white, and they're pretty easy to just hit up with a Gundam marker. I then ran an X-Acto blade flush along the rim, just to clean it up a bit. Or at least that's the method I use. Regardless, you're going to want to paint up this before you put this red jewel inside, as removing this piece after the fact can be a little difficult. From there, I hit the rim of his upper arm with a little bit of gray. They're molded into the dark blue of the shoulder joint, but technically this section is supposed to be gray. There's a bit of an edge to it, so I just freehanded it with a gray Gundam marker. I would have liked to have added some gray to the underside of the shoulder armor too, just to make it look a little less toyish, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. It did wonders for my Master Grade GP01 though, so this is definitely on my to-do list. Next up, I kept that gray Gundam marker out and filled in these dashes on the back of the chest. Nothing mandatory, and I'm sure panel lining would look great too, but I figured I'd go for it since I already had the marker out. The bottom of his forearm could use some gray paint as well. They come in white, but a few passes with a Gundam marker adds so much depth to them. Most of this detailing is really easy to get looking good, but I do have to admit, I'm not a fan of the gray painting around the neck and shoulders. These gray rims are actually molded into the white of the chest armor, and unfortunately, they don't really have hard edges. There's also no panel lines to guide you here. You basically have to freehand these, or go for some really annoying masking. The last few touch-ups are found on his X Buster. These yellow circles are a pretty quick paint job. They come in white, but like those gray circles on the head, it's really easy to pop them off, fill them in with yellow paint, then clean it up afterwards. I also highly recommend getting some deep black into the circular panel line on the side. It just adds so much definition to the Buster. Lastly, we have these 2 yellow sections on the back of the Buster. They come molded into this red piece, so it can be a little difficult getting a consistent coat of yellow paint inside. Still, if you stay patient and run through multiple coats, you can get it looking half decent. Just make sure you paint this before you insert the clear orange pieces, as once they're in, there is no way to get them out again. And that about does it for the build. Coming from a Gunpla perspective, a Kotobukiya kit is always interesting. While this definitely doesn't have the intricate build of a master grade, or honestly a lot of newer high grades, I was still really surprised by how many of these colors are separate pieces. The seam lines can be a little rough, but there's definitely nothing here that would scare off a beginner. Now with this kit built, let's see how he turned out. The proportions here are very solid. While the original artwork is definitely more cartoony, looking a bit shorter and rounder, this kit does a great job of capturing the look of this armor. Nothing really seems out of place here, with his bulky legs and forearms blending very well with the rest of the suit. The head is also in great proportion to the chest. His limbs are a little slimmer than I'd like, but I'd say the overall silhouette here is fairly close to what you'd expect from a more modern take on this classic armor. I'd say it takes more from the refined look found in X4 onwards, rather than the more freeform takes of the early 90s, but it's still very much the original Mega Man X's armor. Moving on to these colors, they're fairly well implemented here. They seem a tad bit darker than they were in the game, but they're still very saturated and really stand out against this pure white. The yellow specifically is great, being just dark enough to blend in with this darker blue, yet still colorful enough to pop. Same goes for this light blue found in the chest and limbs, which is just bright enough for you to notice them, but not bright enough to distract you from the great white and deep blue. I also really like the clear pieces on this kit. While there aren't as many on here as, say, the 4th armor, I still think these add a ton of uniqueness to this kit. This red jewel on the head looks amazing, and I don't think the head would look anywhere near as good if it was a solid piece or sticker. Same goes for the clear pieces on the top of the buster, and this large circular piece inside the buster. Part of me thinks you could add some highlights in here to simulate an energy blast. Just something to think about. The skin tones used for the face are great as well. This could have easily been some weird orange pink or something, but what we get here looks very natural, even if it's technically the artificial face of a robot. As far as the height goes, he's at 1/12 scale, so about as tall as your average high-grade Gundam. Considering the price tag these kits often go for, he does seem a little on the small side. Other than that, I'd say this full armor's appearance is very solid. I can't really think of many ways it could have been improved. He has great proportions and colors. Sure, he doesn't come with any decals, and he's a little smaller than you'd expect, but this is overall a great interpretation of the first armor. Now let's see what kind of articulation this kit has to offer. Starting down towards the feet, we don't get anything from the foot itself. Thankfully, the ankles have quite a bit of movement to them. They use a swivel with a polycap ball joint on either side. You get a surprising amount of movement here, though the feet are somewhat limited by the armor. Unfortunately though, these polycaps often pop out or slide off their peg. While you can still score some great ground poses here, you'll still have to reconnect the feet fairly often. This is a pretty decent trade-off though for the amount of articulation you get. The knees have a great 135-degree bend, way more than I expected from this armor. It does expose a little more inner frame than I'd like though, so I tend not to bend the knees too much. Also, because these thighs are just a polycap sandwich, you can spin the thigh section completely around. This is a great way to hide that terrible seam line running up the side. You can also rotate the lower legs around to help get them stable on the ground. It's really basic engineering, but still very useful. Onto the hips, we have some very nice kicks and splits. There's also a swivel inside that allows you to lower the leg for a better range of movement. Working our way up, the chest is another polycap sandwich, so you can move the top and bottom separately. He also has a double ball joint in the upper chest that allows the top part of his armor to tilt independently. This is where you're going to get most of his chest articulation. The shoulders have a bare bones inner frame, allowing for a great pop out and all around decent movement. This is going to be super useful for getting shooting poses. The arm itself is on a swivel and a peg, so you get the usual 360-degree spin and some lateral movement. Going down the arm, we get another swivel below and a 135-degree bend from this elbow. Pretty solid stuff here. Like the legs, you can rotate this lower section around independently, so you can get his buster at any angle you'd like. You get a pretty decent selection of hands for this kit. There's a set of closed fist, a set of open hands, and a pair for his Hadoken. All of them plug into the arm with a polycap, so real quick to swap in and out. Lastly, we have his head, which is on a very tall double ball joint. You get a surprising amount of movement out of it, and that should about cover it. The articulation here is pretty alright. The engineering can be strange in some places, and it's often more simple than you'd expect, but it definitely gets the job done. My only real complaint is the ankle connection. These feet really do pop off all the time. Still, if you have the patience for them, then this Mega Man X can hit all of his in-game poses and more. Finally, let's see what kind of gimmicks this kit comes with. This Mega Man X full armor really only has one gimmick, but it's an amazing addition. This full armor includes his iconic Street Fighter Hadoken. It has tons of molded in ridges that refract light in some really interesting ways. I'm also a huge fan of this ring around the blast. It adds so much energy to the effect. The included stand also does a great job of blending into the effect. It really looks great, and I often use it as a generic energy blast or a charge shot. If you're not as much into the Hadoken, maybe you got a little tired of repeating that one section of Armored Armadillo stage over and over again, you can instead remove the blast itself and replace it with a little attachment point. This lets you plug in a clear stand and get this Mega Man X aerial. Honestly though, I couldn't get it working, as none of my action bases or stands would fit. Turns out, this really only works with Kotobukiya's new flying base stand. I did order one, but I couldn't get it in time for this video. Of course, with this articulation being pretty great, I'm sure getting him in the air would look really cool. As if that wasn't enough to make this Hadoken effect piece an amazing addition, you can also separate these two halves of the base and use them as a generic aura effect. You can put him in the middle, like he's charging up, and have this energy effect surrounding him. Or you could put one on either side of him to add some effects to a dashing or shooting pose. Kotobukiya really included a single effect piece and managed to score 3 different uses for it. Just amazing stuff, and it makes me wish Bandai would include some effect pieces every now and again. One last gimmick to mention though. An interesting aspect of these Kotobukiya Mega Man X kits is that they all use the same basic build. This means you could swap out armor pieces with the other Mega Man kits. It's pretty fun to mix and match parts from all the games to create your ideal armor. I could see someone going for a really crazy custom build here. And that about does it for the gimmicks. You really don't get as many extras as you'd expect here, but Kotobukiya still managed to do a lot with very little. And with that, I think it's time to wrap all this up here. This Kotobukiya Mega Man X full armor is a very solid kit. The build here was surprisingly good, with hints of an inner frame and some great part separation. He does require a bit of work on your part to get 100% game accurate, but it was nothing a beginner couldn't knock out. The appearance here is definitely based more on an X4 or extreme version of this armor, but I still found it to be a great interpretation, though he is a bit on the small side. The articulation was interesting, as a lot of it was pretty bare bones polycap sandwiches. However, many of these key joints do have some inner frame, allowing him to get a lot of dynamic poses. The feet do have a tendency to pop off though, but it's not the biggest deal. Finally, we have the gimmicks, which were a little sparse here. This Hadoken effect piece does have a lot to offer though. This Mega Man X full armor is all around a great kit, and I really enjoyed having it on my turntable. However, I do feel the need to mention the price. I don't normally go into this, as prices fluctuate pretty crazy with this stuff, but I got this kit for about 80 bucks. That's a pretty hard sell in my opinion, especially given he's only about as tall as a $15 high grade. Still, I'm a huge fan of the Mega Man series, so personally, I do think this was money well spent, and I have no problem recommending these kits to other fans of the series. Just be careful you don't end up like me and decide to start collecting them. Anyway, that should about do it. Feel free to leave any questions about this kit in the comments, and I'm happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Twitter/X and Instagram. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.